pledge. And will you lead us, please?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. Got a nice full house tonight, audience. Up first, we've got the approval of minutes. We've got two separate sets. First set is for the special board meeting on January 23rd. Was everyone able to look those over? Did we have any corrections, questions? Seeing none. Any discussion? Any public comment? None. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Hold on, wait. Skipped over a step. I need a motion. Oh, both sets of minutes. We all just went along with what I said anyways. Okay, so Jennifer made the motion. Do I have a second? Thank you, Jen. So moved and seconded. Any discussion? There was none. Any public comment? Seeing none. All in favor now, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, second approval. This is for our special board meeting on February 2nd. Was everybody able to look those over?
Yeah.
Any corrections?
I do believe there was one. I think it was like the third motion discussing reimbursement for travel. I think it noted there's like a 5-5 vote. I believe I voted against that.
We'll look it over. Sherry? Okay. Do we have a motion with the correction?
So my,
Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Jennifer. Been moved and seconded. Do you have any further discussion on that? None. Any public comment? None. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Heather,
Yeah.
I would like to here that need to get going. Can we flip your student reports?
Okay. Let's scoot up to student reports. I've got Kalispell Middle School first. Will you guys grab the mic right over there? There's two. Or you can share one. Welcome.
Hi, I'm from Kalispell Middle School, and we've been doing a lot of activities this winter. We have the school play, which is Beauty and the Beast. That'll be March 7th, 8th, and 9th. There are over 54 people participating, around 50 in the cast, and then 20 plus doing crew. That means like scenery and backstage and
At the end of this month, the choir, the orchestra, and the band will all be performing. But for the band, it will just be a practice where they will go into Missoula and playing amongst the people.
we're in the middle of girls' basketball season. There are 3 teams for 7th grade and 4 teams for 8th grade, and they get to play with people all around.
Special Olympics is going on right now. Friday they go up and they practice. And we will have an all-school assembly achievements during this.
And now we're registering for our next year at KMS, and then some of us are the 8th graders are registering for high school next year.
Great, thank you. Questions? Can you tell me the dates again for your play?
March 7th, 8th, and 9th. There's 4 different showings. There's Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday afternoon, and Saturday night.
We didn't get to hear what you two are up to. What particular activities are you doing the next few months, or which school are you registering for next year?
I'm going to Glacier next year. Right now I, doing Beauty and the Beast on the, then soon, the next couple months, I'm gonna be doing track. Right now I'm doing snowboarding.
I'm Hilda, and I'm doing the play as well. I'm going to Glacier next year. I'm Belle in the play.
Oh,
Yeah, anything else?
any other questions? Thank you. Thanks for coming. Okay, up next is Flathead High School. Welcome.
If you guys stand forward, the stuff isn't on
You
your
won't
face.
be blinded.
There you go.
I would have told them, but I didn't want to interrupt. I didn't want to interrupt.
Hi, so we're from the Flathead Speech and Debate team. I'd like to talk about how kind of like the end of our season started, or not started, but how the end of our season went. So at state tournament, we qualified, well, not qualified, we had 5 state champions in 4 events. I'm gonna name them. Okay, we had, Brody, who qualified in legislative debate. We had Lindy, who won in program oral interpretation. We had Taylor, who won in extemporaneous speaking, and myself and my partner, Sierra, who won in duo interpretation.
We also this weekend just had our national qualifiers tournament and are going to nationals in Des Moines this summer with 6 qualifiers, including 2 teams of duo inter. I qualified in World Schools Debate. We also have Lindy, who qualified in POI, Mitchell, who qualified in Senate or House. All right, Mitchell qualified in House, and Kaylee, who qualified in Senate. So we are planning to begin fundraising for our national tournament. Coming up this March, we'll begin our fundraising session.
Thank you. Good job.
Great, thank you guys.
I don't think you mentioned who won state.
Flathead.
Any
And
further
don't forget to
questions?
invite the board to your fundraising events. There might be some people in this room who might be willing to support debate. I have a funny feeling. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, up next, Glacier.
Hi, so I'm Josie. I'm junior class president at Glacier.
I'm Jack Melnick, and I'm just a junior representative for student council.
We had a lot going on at Glacier. Our speech and debate team has done really well. They got third in state, not as good as Flathead, but they did really good. They won the traveling trophy, most accumulative points in the season. And we had 12 national qualifiers and 8 state champs, or not 8, 5, sorry.
Boys and girls swim team, competed pretty good. Girls got 4th place overall and broke 2 records, and boys got 8th place with, numerous records broken.
And our blood drive we had last Thursday was super successful. We had 42 people donate, which is a constant flow of kids walking through the donation area, along with Mr. Stump over there. He also donated, so other people in our faculty donated. So it's super, super successful this year.
We've been, working pretty hard, student council, and, a new idea that we're starting is a granola bar drive. So, it was introduced by Mrs. Williams and a few students in the counseling office, and basically kids who are hungry or just need a snack come and get, granola bars. And so, we are either planning on doing a granola bar drive, with an incentive that we're still deciding on, or just having, people donate and we match it.
Personally, what I find most important is this project Jack and I are working on. It's a special needs, spring formal that we're introducing to the valley. It's something new that I don't believe has been done before. We came up with the idea when I was volunteering, every Wednesday during school with them, and some students were expressing how they felt like they couldn't go to our proms and dances, sensory issues with the dark and soft music. So our goal is to make like a sensory-friendly environment where they can not get as overwhelmed and really kind of enjoy themselves and dress up as well as like make feel good, because that's what each student will be escorted by either a Glacier High School student council member or like somebody from our like body, months for sure to dance with. I forgot to mention this, but we're inviting Flathead High School students and life skills kids too. Our goal is maybe to eventually make it an entire valley-wide thing. Maybe encourage them to come to our regular dances. Wait, one more thing. We're also working with some art lockers. Not yet, but we're going to make sure that they all have dresses and stuff.
And then, for like our actual, like our prom, we've chosen the theme of Met Gala, but we're calling it GHS Gala, and still working on that, but yeah.
Great.
Questions?
When was, the extra prom that you're putting on?
It is on March 20th.
I think that's a great idea. Good for you guys. That's a great idea. I can't wait to hear all about it. Thank you for coming. Well, thank you guys all for being here. That takes a lot to get up and be brave enough to stand in front of this group and let us know what's going on. Speech and debate, we can always tell when you guys are in speech and debate. You get up here and you're great. Okay, now we're gonna do board chair update. Couple things. First of all, I wanna thank everyone for being part of our superintendent search, for being part of escorting people around, everybody who worked so hard behind the scenes of setting up rooms and setting up just different events that was going on. Thank you to the board for coming and putting in the time and the effort. So we ended up with a fantastic candidate that I'm really excited about. But I know everybody worked really hard. Liz, everybody behind the scenes, Chris, Pete, shuffling people around, everybody worked very hard, and I appreciate every one of you. And I appreciate the board for putting in the time and did it. I think we did a great job, and I'm very glad we are done with that process, and now we can move forward. Let's see, yesterday, Lance and Jack and I, we had our first meeting with the KEA negotiation team. That went well. We will be meeting again. We are scheduled to meet with them again on the 26th. Today, we had our tour of Flathead. Mrs. Payne gave us a great tour, showing us a couple different classrooms where we got to go in and we got to observe, and then gather together and discuss what we saw and what they're working on with PCC. It was very impressive. It's always impressive to see what's going on at Flathead. I don't know if everybody was aware of this, but on the 24th of January, Sue put together a group of us to meet with the chamber. She and Matt put this together, and we sat down with a few people from the chamber and just had an open discussion with what's going on and partnering, what it will look like in the future, partnering with them. And it was a great conversation. We all walked out of there with just a very positive. Our first step was to move forward and send out a survey. So the chamber sent out a survey, KPS sent out a survey. We're going through those results. We got to go through those at our communication meeting the other day, so that was exciting to see. And last, we put together a workforce housing committee that I'm serving on with Randy and Jarrett, and we got together on the 25th, going over some ideas of what this looks like, what it could look like, and we'll be going around tomorrow. We get together and meet on Valentine's Day. And I get to spend some time with these guys, and we're going to go around and view some different locations that maybe potentially we could use in the future for housing for our kids. So that's all I have for right now. We're gonna move on to public comment. Alright. At this time, the board will allow comment on public matters that are not on the main agenda. Members of the audience are encouraged to briefly address the trustees on issues that are not on our agenda. Chair of the board will seek comments from the audience on significant items as they occur. Public matters do not include any pending legal matters, private personnel issues, or private student issues. Please do not attempt to address such issues at this time, or you'll be ruled out of order. Please note that individuals will be given 3 minutes for public comment. Do I have any public comment tonight? Welcome.
Hello, my name's Jared Stump. I work at Glacier High School. Please forgive me if I missed this somewhere. As I've attended all the public school board meetings in the past few months, once even by taking advantage of your Zoom call, that helps communicate with the general public in our valley. After listening to the Zoom call, I'd like to suggest the board look into how the Zoom meetings are being ran. I noticed that without video, it's very difficult to follow, even for someone like me who knows the voices of everyone in the room. It's kind of hard to follow when I was listening in on the last meeting. Having video would also allow for more personal communication with the public, especially when Jack makes a joke, because you can see his laughter and his smile. I know how important it is to speak clearly into the microphone now, so people can hear us, which I didn't know before my first public comment. I tried to just like free wing it out there, and you know, it's really important that we communicate with the public. For instance, God bless Liz, but your microphone was all messed up the last time, and it was cutting in and out, and I don't know if someone sabotaged you or what, but it was hard to follow what was going on in the meeting, so just a suggestion. My comment today is just that I'm a little shocked. School board did not have more public discussion about approving the new public charter schools. It sounds to me like the charter schools have already been approved, but then correct me if I'm wrong there. In the previous meeting on October 24th, it was stated that you were just voting on the applications for right then. And then if you did get the grant, at that time, you could come back to discuss this and get into the nitty-gritty of the funding and the impacts to the district. This was not only brought up, it was used seemingly to help convince some of the members to go ahead and vote for the item to get, that application sent to the state. What I've seen is, I was kind of expecting that to happen in the next meeting, the more public comment. I held back that day. I didn't think it was the right time and place to give a public comment on that. But I'm worried about how this affects our teachers' scheduling and class sizes in the building that have very limited space and large class sizes. At Flathead High School, Michelle brought up that they have a space already for their PACE Academy within their new renovation. But at Glacier, one of the reasons we did away with Freshman Academy teaming was the blocks were getting so hard to schedule as we reached capacity. And by adding block scheduling, it takes up a room for 3 straight periods, and it makes that board really hard to squeeze everything in that we're trying to do. And then, we read articles like in the Beacon, they ran one explaining the new Montana Western model Glacier was gonna try out, and how you take chemistry in 6 weeks, and there's no way it could work at Glacier High School. Brad has really been great at telling us that we're gonna do what we can, where we can, and it's not gonna be forced on us. I really support the idea of the money, and that, I totally understand that part. The elementary one was the only one that was proposed to run a deficit, so, but the other ones I totally support. So I just want to remind you, when you do say you're gonna do something, or say you're not gonna do something, actions speak louder than words to the public. But, thank you for your time and all you guys do. I really appreciate it.
Keith, do you want to address that in your, update this afternoon, or this evening? Jared, and you'll get the update on that.
Perfect. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Do I have any other public comment this evening? None? Okay, we'll move on. Personnel action items. Liz?
If you could pull up the report. This is our sub list, so usually we did this once per year in April. I'd like to change that practice to do right before school starts, so you have them and then we'll do one at the end of first semester. But that was just brought up now, so in the future it would be in January. But we'll do one now, and then we'll do the other half, or an updated list then, in August. So here is our sub list for semester one.
Credits at the end of a movie.
Usually we do.
Personal activity reports on there too, if people have it, please. So just some things to note on our personnel activity report. You'll see 8 retirements there already. Just wanted to point out and remind everyone that our early retirement incentive ends, the same day as our next board meeting, so that will actually end at noon. Eda and I are working on, we're gonna just update that afternoon right before the board meeting. So at the board meeting, you'll have all of the early retirements, that are coming in with our incentives. And then we might have a couple that don't take the early retirement incentive, and their irrevocable waivers would be due March 1st. But after that date, then we should have a solid retirement list for the 20 school year. And Pete, if you could scroll to the bottom for me. I just would like you to take a look at our most recent custodial shortage. We're at 24% unfilled, right? That'll lead into my next.
Are we, and you might not know, moving people around MS, because MS has 4 openings. That's the only school that really has a bunch of openings. So what are we doing to address the shortage of custodians at the middle school?
Greg, this will all lead into the next 2 action items, actually. Greg Maslin has taken over the custodial supervisor role right now and is in the works of reshuffling and organizing some positions. We also have a new lead at KMS, so we're just in sort of a rebuild season. But it is being addressed, and it is definitely on our radar.
Understand the life cycle versus all of these are due to the early retirement.
So March 1st is a non-early retirement. We bumped ours up so we could have that well in advance. Also corresponded with. And only 2 of these retirements did not mention income. So I'm not pushing them to answer whether that's by hard cost reason, but, 6 of them have mentioned. It's not, our retirement incentive is not based on years of service, it's based on our salary maintenance. So our furthest to the right column, so the most, for education, the last 3 columns, all the way at the bottom. This school year, so they can't, it wouldn't be replaced starting next year, but they have it in our district sometimes.
A simple way for me to look at it, the 2 people that are 30 years experience, they're taking advantage of retiring and having the employer's contribution to the health insurance plan paid for until age 65. Person with 36 years of experience doesn't have that benefit, so they're getting the retirement incentive, and anybody less than 20 years may not be 100%, but most of them is because of the retirement incentive.
We have a motion to approve the personnel action items as presented.
So made.
Vince? Sure. Okay, so we have a second.
Second?
Thank you, Jack. Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? None? Any public comment on this?
I have one. Just, how do you feel about, we saw the raw numbers, but how do you feel, are the schools feeling confident that when they need a sub, they're going to have somebody in? How are our numbers overall?
I think if you ask Jared, our numbers are not where we need them to be. So if anyone listening would like to sub our department at Kalispell Public. But we are getting by with filling in for each other. It is definitely on our radar. I think on our average day, we're about 85% of our unfilled positions are filled.
Moved and seconded. Any? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, up next, notice to bargain. Liz?
So this is our third union has turned in their notice to bargain, just in.
On this? You willing to join the negotiation team for this? Reach out to Randy if you are. Okay. Custodial incentive. Liz?
So this is a proposed $500 incentive to finish out the school year and get us into summer, so we can sort of backfill some of that, particularly at PMS that Scott asking about. We do have a few members who are planning to retire before the end of the school year. This could help shift some of the plans. But it also helps incentivize new hires, and it also, the way it's structured, would and our staff who have been here. We do have 6.875 FTE that are unfilled, which is our 24%, and just a quick calculation, 175 cleaning hours per week that are not filled. So when the MOU that we drafted and you approved in December isn't cutting it, this was our second option that we had discussed at the facility. Also to note, there's 28.5 FTE, but there are the potential for 39 custodial positions. So that's why it's at 20,000.
Remind me, what is our?
It's at $16.94.
I have a motion to approve the custodial incentive. Thank you. Is that a second? A second. Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I was at a meeting as well, and, I mean, really, yeah, in this particular, and, I'm wondering if in negotiations, this is what we can do with the contract. This is your role. We have for the service. Increment doesn't need to be incorporated. I guess I'm just planting that seed, and I support that seed in our.
Like I said, we are restructuring. I probably should have put this below the next agenda item, but it is sort of leader of the restructuring. So, hopefully when all of this is approved and we
We were having a number of student, workspace custodians for a while. Is that still happening? Is that working well? Is that a program we want to expand or contract, or is that helping at all or not at all?
We have had some custodians hop on, we've had some hop off. We are looking into what the age is that we could potentially place student custodians down into the middle school. We are onboarding 6 new student custodians who are going to take over the central office from the Linderman Education Center. So it's just the ebb and flow kind of constant.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? None. Any public comment on this? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, facilities coordinator.
So just an information item that has passed through personnel. Normally we don't bring full job description just speak to the full board, but we did want to nod at, this is not a new position. This is that custodial supervisor position that we've restructured in the bigger, so this position would actually be shipping, receiving, and custodial supervisor, and then facilities usage coordinator. So they would be in charge of the scheduling, piece like Rotary. This would marry nicely with a custodial supervisor, then that would clean us for the next. Not a new FTE, just an adjustment.
Information only. Do you have any questions? Come on. Okay, Pete, up next, 24-25 calendar.
Try to do an overview, just, obviously the timeline and the process, and then team members, there's a comprehensive agreement with KAA, just says, school calendar, establish school calendar prior to May 1st. We always try to get it done. A lot of other districts follow our suit, so that basically out there, that's why we also do a skeleton calendar, for the following year. So we met several times with the committee, also with admin. The 24-25 skeleton calendar that you, approved last year is on there, but the, calendar that the committee is proposing is, well, and I'll just kind of give you we did look at doing, several options. Calendar, the biggest one, falls around the winter break. So, coming back on a Thursday, January, 2nd, we thought, well, that's not, the greatest time to come back. On Monday, or till Tuesday, June 10th, committee, we asked them to go out, just kind of pull, folks in their building, and so when they came back, it was overwhelmingly 50-50. So, and we said, that's about how it goes, basically with the calendar committee, and so, we decided that this year, so we would propose the winter break of coming back on that Thursday, January 2nd, so students and staff would go on that Thursday and Friday, and it would have much impact on moving graduation, wouldn't have impact on the different
semesters, one semester being longer than the other semester. You know, so that's what they go with, and then and the trade-off for that was that, you know, the following year, it just made Tuesday, and that way, if you look at it, we can balance the semesters. We can also, you know, provide, students coming back on that Monday at the high school level, and then, having Tuesday and Wednesday, the elementary also, that would be best, too. It would be best Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Tuesday. So, we also went through and we looked through the calendar. So this year, there's currently 38 early releases. And so what we tried to do is we tried to, remove some of those early releases. You know, that's some of the things, but I'll give the rationale for why we would like to continue with the early releases, but we went down from 38, to 29. So anytime, that we have a day off during the week, so we eliminated the early release. Anytime, we had 2 early releases in a week, we eliminated that. So if we had an early release on a Wednesday, we're out early on a Friday, say for, winter break. So then we just eliminated the Wednesday early release. So that took that down to, the 29 early releases. You have an adjustment that will need to be being made in there, so I just want that in as a note. Just normally that December 12th is early release for speech and debate, so that might change. We don't have a confirmation, on when we will post that, so it's, the other thing that I really want to talk about is, you know, the rationale for keeping, early release, Wednesdays. If you take a look at our strategic plan, you know, this is really embedded in our strategic plan in goal number 3 and goal number 5. All schools, so in goal number 3, all schools will engage in professional development to define and assess competency in areas. And so, you know, the biggest thing is we're rolling out probably one of the biggest initiatives, you know, at least in my career, and asking, you know, we need time to do this. When are we going to do this? And we can't do all of this work in the summer, and you can't expect us to do it all on the weekends and all in the evenings. So that played into it, you know, as a big part of it. And then also you look at goal number 5, where it says all schools will implement a professional development plan that provides diverse offerings and encourages teachers, staff, trainers, staff and trainers, becomes really important. So to, you know, to be able to work through that, but, the board that was on the tour today, you know, we also try to provide some flexibility within that, because we're pushing out personalized competency-based education to the students. We also want to give that flexibility to the staff. So some examples, also sitting back there, so a good example is like Flathead High School. You know, they will have, professional development for all their staff on Wednesday. So, and a part of that, she'll give them the first half an hour to be able to work with students, because they always have students coming to them, we need this, we need that. And then the rest of the time, you know, it's usually, a structured, professional development from the administration, or it comes from the staff. But then also embedded within that is, you know, the science department might be working on standards-based grading, and they said, hey, it's better for us to spend our time working on standards-based grading during the time of the department, instead of coming to try to allow that flexibility. Just really trying to hone in on it. We looked at, you know, because there was some talk, you know, hey, would it be better in the mornings, would it be better, you know, on a Friday? We felt that the best time, you know, was the Wednesday during the middle of the week, so that we had the most staff participation and the most, student participation. You know, we've also tried to really look at, you know, some of the parents, early releases are killing us. So, Liz is going to bring this up a little bit, later, but we're applying for a 21st century, learning grant that provides, after-school, care and tutoring, for the district. It also is embedded in there is a summer school. So trying to look at, you know, how can we address this? This is what we need to do. It's trying to look at our parents and our community, is how can we really make this work for, you know, for all of us? We know it is a burden on you, but it's really important work that we do. So, Liz and a crew of, folks have really been working on that, she'll give you an update on. Through our personalized competency-based education and our work-based learning, we've also provided opportunities, so like out at Edgerton, on early release, we have a staff member that oversees it, but we have students from the high school going out there and doing activities, with the students, so that they have a place until they're able to pick up and, partnerships that we're going to do. So, we really tried to think through all of this. One of my big things was, how do we get more, flexibility, within our schedule? You heard from the long-range facility, planning folks, about some of the adjustments that we can make with the schedule, to allow, greater capacity, within our schools. And we're really exploring that. And what we found out is that we have the autonomy within our schedule. It doesn't matter if we start, on August 26th and end on, June 5th. We still have the autonomy, at each of the schools and at the elementary and the high school to be able to provide that flexibility. I think that's one thing that our charter schools, will be able to provide is some of that flexibility. I challenged our high schools, today. I said, it's kind of fast and furious with the charter schools, but, it's a 4-day week, within that. Does that give us greater capacity? Does it give us more incentive, for teachers? And then Matt talked about this at the elementary. Hey, we might have a 4-day week for teachers, but we could expand it to 5 days. So we're, trying to get creative with the schedules and some different possibilities, even though we have a traditional schedule. Another one that was brought up was, like marching band. Marching band starts in August. Usually ends at Q1. Well, why can't we have that staff member starting and the students so that they can earn their half a credit from August, to November, and then, building in other items for them. So we're kind of going off on some of this stuff, but I just want you to give a little context to just, how we've looked at it, from much, every angle. So before you, that's why you have the 24-25 calendar with 29 early release dates, and then the skeleton calendar, for 25.
Jen?
Repeat. First of all, I would like to applaud the calendar committee, for, having our PIR align with MLK Day in 2025. I heard a lot from the community on that, and it was why we did it. But I heard a lot from the community, both on the, for lack of recognition for MLK Day. And then I also heard from a lot of parents who, have kids at school on that day when they may have the day off. And later, they have to find childcare for a kid. So I want to say thank you for doing that based on what I've heard from the community. And I know I've heard why we did that, because we didn't understand that. But from a community perception standpoint, probably more backlash on that than anything that I've heard. I do have to talk about the Wednesday early release, and that's why I'm apologizing to you, Pete, because also that is probably the second most frustrating thing I hear from our community, especially from working parents. Finding time on Wednesday afternoon, hard, and care for kids on Wednesday. Fully agree, and that we need to invest in our teachers and give them the opportunity to carry out our strategic. I know we've looked at other days, but I would consider Monday morning, Friday afternoon, anything like that that is more cohesive to for trying to juggle schedules. And also, I do appreciate looking into this program, because I find that having my kids on their iPads at my office Wednesday afternoons isn't necessarily the best thing for them. If there was some sort of that I could sign them up for, that would be a much better option. But in any event, those are the two things I hear the most on. And I know this calendar committee, there's a lot of things at play. You guys work really hard to come up with it, and it's not an easy job. And we work really hard on it, but those are the two things I do want to reiterate. I support we need to give our teachers tools and what we need, but then we could look at other times that might be more.
Pete, can I, 1 second? Jen, I'm on this calendar committee also, and I had the same reservations you did, because I'm listening to the community just like you are. And when we sit on this committee and throw out those ideas, when you hear the reasoning behind, you know, to me, I was thinking the same thing. Monday mornings, no brainer, that would be a good idea. When you hear from the teachers of why that doesn't work, when they're so limited to that time frame where if they're working hard on something, you can't roll over by 5 minutes. When you have your kids at your door ready to come in and be in the classroom, that meeting has to stop, dead stop right where they're at, instead of having that extended time on Wednesday. So if they're moving in a direction and they're working hard on something, there's a little grace period there because they don't have students ready to come in the building, which made perfect sense to me. Fridays, I hear the exact same thing. There's always this compromise on, if you have to take a day, why not do it on Fridays? And again, as a mom, I'm kind of like, no brainer, Fridays. We brought that up at the committee, hearing from the teachers and the staff as to their rationale as to why Fridays don't work. It makes perfect sense. Kind of, maybe if we can arm our trustees with some of these responses, when we do hear this from the community, we can respond a little bit better where maybe they can understand it a little bit more, because we're all parents. We get it. It's hard to have your kids get out early, but I also see, especially today when we were with here at Flathead, seeing their schedule that we got to see and how they utilize Wednesday early out. Yes, we have our community saying, you know what, that was a COVID thing, but it was a COVID thing, but now we're using it for something else. We have this big, huge project we're working on, and we're asking so much of our teachers. We do need to give them this time. But in order to really get to those responses of how we respond to our community, as to why we chose these days versus a different day or a different time, I think that'll just help the communication piece, just explaining it a little better, so maybe they have a little more understanding and they're okay with it. Yeah.
You know, the Friday dilemma with the teaching staff is the same dilemma that families have. Make a long weekend. And so paid time off, vacation, whatever, teachers are gone, and therefore you don't get the group effort together. So they're gonna have the same thought process as families who wanna leave at noon, whether it's winter or whether it's spring or fall. Whereas the middle of the week, the challenge of keeping the teachers there does not exist, because they understand what's going on. Whereas if it's a Friday afternoon, it's like, I'm got this early release, got vacation time, I'm gone. And therefore you destroy the cooperative nature of what is become embedded on the Wednesday early release. So yes, it's very frustrating when, and you can't blame the staff for wanting to do it either. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that if you have the opportunity to do it? But then what about all those that want to be focused on what they're doing, and you've taken away a participant in it who's part of that department, and they're trying to go in a certain direction and they're not there to participate in it? So yes, I don't know culturally how to address that one, other than we're not going to make everybody happy.
There's another part of Fridays too. Montana law doesn't allow after-school activities to happen on Sunday. So, and we often have fair distances to travel. So if we're gonna have Saturday meets or even 2-day meets of whatever kind, wrestling, debate, choose your extracurricular, we actually have fairly low student and teacher, in the school on Fridays already, because we're losing a lot of people to, last I looked, it was, we go between like 3% and 6% of our teachers are coaching. Anytime, do you have another numbers, Liz?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, I've looked at it over the years, it does change season to season, but it's surprisingly high. And then the student piece also, I mean, you're a teacher, is Friday, how many kids are in class on an average Friday versus an average Wednesday?
Friday is definitely the low kind of enrollment day as far as school-sponsored activities and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Thursday and Friday are Monday's the best enrollment day. You're given a test. Do it on Monday, even though that's hard for kids. Like, they're all there.
Right, so that's the other real thing about Fridays, is just everyone's already gone.
Have we done I feel like in one of the surveys this was there, but have we done a survey of the families to see how many of them might utilize childcare, like especially in the elementary schools, on Wednesday? Have that available? No. We don't know, like, how many people would take us up on it. Would it be helpful? Or, like, if we get the grant, we'll just see, or?
We didn't want to put it out there until we had something to fill it with. So we're first exploring the grant option.
We at least had those numbers for KMS. Didn't KMS used to do their Pride after-school education program on Wednesdays? I think it stopped during, I think they used to.
Not sure of any surveys that KMS has done since I've been here.
No, I meant numbers, that we have absolute numbers of people who want to have their after-school.
Yeah, we could pull the participation number.
I just wanted to say that there is a House bill, I think it's 542 right now, that's like held up because, it's like a child care bill, but in it has stuff about immunizations in child care, which is what the holdup is, but it also, lays out a whole new rule package for after-school programs, so we've been really trying, pushing really hard to get that going. We started working with Boys and Girls Club, I brought it up with Parks and Rec, because if those places can get licensed, then the parents or families can receive domestic beginning scholarship, which will really help, a lot of those low-income families, and they can get all the childcare covered, for after school. So if you feel like advocating for House bills, I'm pretty sure it's 542, and they just need to get it, we can help more families. Goes up to 12, so it's pretty helpful.
I move to approve calendar for the next school year and the skeleton for the following school year.
Thank you, Jack. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Lance. It's been moved and seconded. Sorry, Pete, we kind of hijacked your session.
Okay, I was gonna argue with Jen anyway.
Discussion?
Yeah. On a totally different note, so I was told when we first got here that we have what looked to me to be unusually short, winter breaks, that some schools go up to 3 weeks or longer, and ours were always kept to 1.5 weeks. And the reason I was told was, students needing both food and heat, and that our schools were providing these, seems a week and a half without heat, but, is that, we do have a longer break than we've often done before, is that no longer a concern? Have we become a richer community, or what's going on?
No, this would probably be the average. Usually they average around 10 days, but it's like where the calendar falls. So the following year for the skeleton calendar would be a little bit longer. It would be 2 weeks. You know, just a lot of it is just when we start, when we finish. You also have to realize too that, you know, usually we start summer school right away, do 6 weeks, you know, for summer school. So if you're going to the middle of June, a lot of times, you know, that's for our staff. The reason that they move here, the reason that they're here is so that they can cherish the summers in the Flathead Valley. So there's a lot of, you know, reasons for and why we do and why we don't. But in the end, it's additional schedule.
I just wanted to ask, like, would it make sense to maybe build in some remote learning days? Like, especially I hate that Thursday, Friday, like, just coming back for Thursday, Friday. Usually if you're gonna go, like, on vacation on winter break, so would it make build in? Like, there's a lot of families that go build in remote optional days for families. That's trying to like hustle back after the new year, get back into routine. Yeah.
I have better thoughts on remote, so I'll let him speak. Pretty much on the spot. I don't have better thoughts on remote.
What is the flexion there?
When we talk about remote for snow days, and this is where this has come up, it's a lot of effort to put together all the coordination for, that option. And then, as it, relates to the snow day, you don't know if you're gonna use it or not. So it's not a great investment of professional development time, resources to invest in something that you may or may not. I actually hadn't, two things I just learned, I'd never heard of, this idea that with heat and food for Christmas break.
Okay.
That's new to me, and then this concept of having a remote day on the end of a Christmas break is new to me as well. I think it'd be pretty unpopular with our staff, just due to the, attendance and just the facilitating of learning and the platform. I get a little PTSD from, we had to do that, so.
Nice. One of the things we did last time when we had this like weird one day of rather than do remote days, was talk about catch-up days. Is that, you know, especially since it is right before finals, I think we're talking about, that the idea that students who need extra could come, but
Rebecca, we actually explored that about, extending the break and going, until, what was it, January, 5th or 6th, and then extending it to, Monday and Tuesday, looking at doing that, but just, that felt that students and, staff would be better served if we came back. Right, so we did explore that in our.
I do want to say I appreciate the reduction in the early release. And, discussion of why and when we do our early release. I know that we might have talked about this before, so I have some of this, but I still hear it.
Got it.
And we all do. I think this falls into us as a with our parents. It is something real that really does.
Okay, we have a motion, it's been moved, seconded. Any further discussion?
There's public comment.
None. Public comment?
I'd like to give just a quick, comment from the teacher perspective. With the early release days, I love the idea of not having 2 in 1 week, because that is a weird flow to the week. But the only concern I have is the amount of work a teacher can get done with the transformational learning, the individualized learning pathways that I'm making right now in 2 of my earth science classes. Gives me that block of time that I can actually, produce and make this curriculum that requires the kids to basically work on their own. It takes a lot of time. And it also allows me to work with certain colleagues where I'm not in a faculty meeting. So I'm hoping that administration is looking into how they divvy those days up. Because it used to be, I got every Wednesday to get that kind of work done during COVID, because we were pushing everything out online, right? It was really important at that time. And that's when I built a lot of this online presence. And then each year it's kind of gotten dialed back, faculty meetings, staff meetings, department meetings, meetings to have meetings and when meetings are going to happen. And it's really important that we have at least some. So right now, I think we have 9 that are teacher-led. And I hope those aren't the 9 we're cutting. You know what I mean? So I just hope that we can work that out. And even though it's 1 a month, I think it really helps us to have that big block of time. Anytime we're given time to just do what we do, the magic that we can make is amazing. Not necessarily has to be all staff driven, just getting in those small pockets like you were mentioning before, where we peel off and do amazing things. I really hope we can protect some of that. As far as that Thursday, Friday coming back and is something going to get done, it's amazing what you can get done, even in 2 days, when people come back from break. So I'm not worried about that kind of thing at all, just from a teacher perspective. Thank you.
Any other public comment? No? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Just to comment on that, the calendar did have a note on there, we might need to change the December date, and then also just request a change it from Christmas.
Up next, maintenance and enhancement of Legends and Glacier Track and Field Surface.
So this is just a proposal, from Flathead and Glacier High School to use interlocal, funds in order to pay for, track upgrades at, Legends and at Glacier High School. And, you guys see the rationale in there. Finance committee on Friday, so let's move forward. We have been putting money, set aside in the interlocal agreement in order to pay for this. Right now, there's, about a balance of $650,000 in there, but that includes both the elementary and the high. For the high school for these needed upgrades and repairs.
I have a motion to approve using the interlocal funds.
So made.
Thank you, Jack. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, thank you, Lance. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Ursula?
It seems like this is maybe an appropriate time to bring it up. I have just been getting a lot of comments about needed repairs and maintenance at the middle school. And I don't have an answer for why those things aren't being done. My assumption is that it's budget driven. But, I am worried about the perception and the allocation of funds going towards these. I've heard there's leaking roofs and things like that. Can anybody address what's happening maintenance-wise at KMS? And if it is budget related, why there might be maintenance being deferred or,
I don't know if I can exactly answer your question, but, you know, when we do set asides, there's both set asides in the interlocal for the high school and for the elementary, so there's around $250,000 in there right now, so it's not budgetary, so, can't answer the facilities, you know, side on this, so this was, driven by the ADs, but, for Legends and for Glacier High School. There is money in there to the interlocal, and when the time comes to fix it.
is there money, is there maintenance money allocated to do things on the school buildings, like in the summer? Is that something that's coming up, or?
You're talking about the building reserve fund, so we have state allocations to cover buildings. The interlocal agreement is designed more so for operations, and it's for, non-recurring expenditures or infrequent expenditures, not recurring expenditures. So the building reserve, so that would be more of a facilities and maintenance question for the building reserve and/or a presentation for prioritizing what needs to be done at the elementary level with all the different buildings as opposed to the interlocal agreement.
Okay. This is just a very large expenditure, and it's not that we don't need to do it, but I've asked in the past, when we have had some of these things, would we extend the period between this maintenance a little bit more, especially in a year where we are talking about a lot of needs from the environment? And I am seeing or hearing that maybe there are other, maybe one-time emergencies, but other maintenance that might be being deferred. It concerns me. It's a large amount of money. It's not that it doesn't need to be done, but I do have to ask in this particular, does it need to be done?
That kind of question can be asked each and every year. Doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Whether we're in good times or bad times, you can still ask the same question. And we'd still be faced with the same dilemma. Does the taxpayer like us to spend money out of our savings that we've set aside for these things? Does it look good? Does it look bad? And yes, the same question will be asked every year. So it's not a new question.
No, but it is a particularly pertinent question this year.
No,
when
it's pertinent every year.
In other years, we haven't been talking about spending large amounts of the savings to just keep things running.
And we will have to probably not, for the upcoming school year, we'll probably have to take $1 million out of the interlocal agreement or more, which is in there for that purpose. But it needs to coincide with other things to make sure it's not a recurring expenditure.
No, I understand that, I just,
So the money here, some of it may be spent in the current fiscal year and the balance in the second, meaning in June and then in July or August. But there will be money necessary for operational needs, 10 times the amount that we're taking out of this, to, in my mind, satisfy any of the concerns that the people might have about our savings account.
well, not ten times, this is a $600,000 expenditure.
This is a $200,000 expenditure.
Where did I thought I heard.
That's how much is in the account. But, Jack, so just to clarify for some of us, this money has always been allocated, put in here specifically for track maintenance. Kind of like, there was earmarks also for curriculum. It's, when it's put in there, it's under the understanding that we're gonna build up this portion of the account because sooner or later, we're gonna get slapped with this huge bill. Pete, and this, we were doing this right now because we're trying to get on the schedule, correct? Scheduling this for the summer, wasn't that what, we were doing this right now?
Yeah, so, well, one, is there are some needed repairs that really need to be done, they haven't been, well, one was addressed in 27. So, you know, and the longer you let some of these things go, the worse it gets, and then it becomes more expensive, but again, you know, they're set aside in the interlocal, and those were tagged as the interlocal for, turf, track, gym floors, and we've been setting aside money. Same, you know, that we do, for curriculum, you know, we did it for the long-range facility plan, so, you know, we put that money in there, although, you know, it doesn't specifically have to be year tagged for anything, once it goes into the interlocal, whether it's high school or elementary, we have been, pretty, strategic about how we want to use some of those.
Well, I actually really appreciate the feedback that these get more, they can become more expensive, I know, with things like roofs, which is an issue, but I know that it can be like that, where more damage is done, it becomes a, obviously it's being brought forward, everybody that has brought it forward believes that it needs to be done this year. I get all of that, so it's to be asked, they're maintenance things, I don't know how we prioritize maintenance things when there's a lot that needs to be.
On this one, they looked at the turf looks good, that didn't need any maintenance. It was just addressing the track at Legends, right, Pete? Just so it doesn't get any worse, and then,
They'll have to bring some infill in for the turf.
oh, the little pellets, they were spreading over it. Any further discussion? There's a motion on the floor to approve using interlocal, Becca?
I do know that we put aside money for this purpose, but I do also know that we can reallocate. And, you know, when we are in such dire straits that we don't know if we'll keep Legends, we don't, you know, I mean, I have a hard time spending this kind of money on one extracurricular. And I would sort of like to know, you know, how many students are in track? I mean, how many what's the student impact for this many students for our two teacher salary almost? You know, or depending on where they are on the pay grade, but, possibly up to 3 teacher salaries. But it's a lot of money to put towards one activity with, especially with that. And I look at the Linderman tennis courts all the time and do think, gosh, if we had maintained them, we wouldn't have lost this thing to be this eyesore. We had gone from a usable facility to a non-usable facility. But I guess I just need to say that I do share the concern and thought that this is a lot of money to spend on one individual. And next time these things do come forward, I would like to see student impact. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't see numbers.
I appreciate that, because I agree. Right now, we're kind of in a bind with a lot of our funding. However, I think the way we should view this is when we built Legends, and put in turf like this and track like this, maintenance has to happen. And I appreciate the fact that we deliberately pull money every single year and allocate it, holding it in this little purse of, this is what we intended to use this for. So save it, save it, save it, because we will need it one day. Fortunately, it's coming at a time where we're trying to be cautious with the amount of money we're spending, so the public can see that we are watching our pennies. But just like Jack said, if it's not this year, it will be knocking on our door again next year. It'll be knocking the following year. And at what point is it a safety concern, and then we lose the entire track? Jennifer?
I just want to add, as far as student impact, you know, we do have the big state track meet, so it's a lot of students that would be impacted, like injuries from them, that's not kept up. It seems like safety over, no.
To that point, I mean, I know that we have a community program, for, elementary. And so, and I do know we host very large events there that do benefit the community significantly. I agree with the cost. This could be either moved around, in our youth, in our community too, and if we don't maintain it, you know, to Linderman tennis courts, yeah. Still play tennis on those courts, but, you know, I mean, I'm not very good, so.
No, and it's not that I'm not cognizant of all this. I feel like in the last 4 years, I have rarely seen more than one or two board members even talk about any financial change or not voting for something. And maybe that's because our wonderful administrators only bring things before us that we should approve. So there is some winnowing happening at one end, but it really is a concern that we never, I don't feel we, as often as we should, really think twice about where are we spending our money, where do we want to spend our money. It is a limited pot, we need to be careful. You know, I probably in the end will vote for this one, but I really do think that we need to really think about when are we going to say no.
Call for the question.
Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, Jack beat me to it.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion. Up next, we've got, superintendent contract. We are still going back and forth with the contract. It has not been agreed upon or signed yet, so I'm asking to table this until our next meeting, just to give time so it can go back and forth and we're not rushed into doing anything.
Motion to table?
Thank you, Pat. Do you have a second? Second. Thank you, Ursula. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
No discussion and no vote, it's tabled. No?
Nope, just a moment. Okay, got that, Sherry? Thank you. Moving on. E3 Safety App. Randy?
Yeah, this is the, recommendation from the Safety and Security Committee. We've been working on, going through the safety and security audit for, several months. We started out, first of all, reviewing the entire safety and security audit. And then we went and we got feedback from the principals of the individual buildings, what has been accomplished, what still needs to be done, safety and security. And then we, looked at this particular app. Originally, I brought it forward in December, and then didn't really, decided to look at a couple more of the various apps that were out there, including the fact that there was a lawsuit involving this particular app in 2023. Made sure that was resolved favorably for that company, that there was no patent infringement, and so that was completely resolved. I looked at 4 other companies that came up with a similar product, but the quality was about the same of all of them, but the price differential of this app having the same quality for a lesser price was something that really appealed to us. Also that appealed to the committee was the fact that FVCC, Whitefish, and Big Fork all currently use this app, so Flathead County is used to it. So Petey, if you want to click on the little video there, takes a couple. Should have sound.
Go ahead and customize those to match your exact verbiage for your district and what you have said.
Did everyone watch it before they arrived at the meeting? Do we have to watch it now? I watched it, yeah.
For the version 3 school safety app, what you're seeing on your screen right now is actually, this is a desktop version that gets installed on every.
What I meant,
Randy,
I'm fine
one
not
second.
watching the video because I've seen it before.
Yeah, I think
Has everybody seen the video?
Can the public see it if we cast it?
it's on the agenda, it's live.
Okay, so everybody could see
Yeah,
it?
it's already on there.
Yeah.
Then I think we're
All
good.
good?
Yes.
Okay, so if you look, if we're done with that, then you can click on the invoice there. See that it's, $9,000 a year, so this is a 3-year contract and a $6,000 setup fee. So the initial investment would be $15,000, and then after that, it'd be $9,000 a year for the next 2 years. And so this is if you watch the video, basically what it does, it contacts all our first responders. It isolates where the problem is to a particular room in a building and notifies all of the teachers in the building if there is a particular area, whether there needs to be a lockdown, and also when it's resolved. And one of the things that I thought was pretty interesting about it is they said at Ronan, they use it even when they get bears on the playground. And so then they notify everybody that there's a bear on the playground, and so recess is inside that particular day while they resolve that situation. And so then this is one of our priorities, and so then we're going to start working through the rest of our priorities in the safety and security, and then also look at what we can accomplish with the funds that we have available at this time. So I would recommend approval of purchasing this app for the school district.
Thank you, Randy. Do we have a motion? Any discussion?
Yeah,
Scott?
I don't know if it was, talked about, but interlocal.
Right, that's what we talked about, finance.
Every year or the initial?
For the first 3 years, so it would be,
I heard you say committee, has this been through was it our IT committee you went through?
No, the safety and security working group. I meant to say working group instead of committee, sorry.
Is this coming from our IT department or our IT committee or not?
Yeah, Jason is on the committee.
been on that committee, and I know that our safety audit, that I like more than one concern. And I really appreciated that, and it was a price point that seems very attainable as compared to it has community and with our first new and angles that everybody. In any event, that's, I just want.
And what about the breadth?
I'm sorry,
What about the breadth? Is it such a small, I mean, yes, I know you have fire drills, fire extinguishers, even though they happen rarely. Is this only addressing one relatively rare concern, or does this have breadth of use? I'm concerned with, always concerned about the number of programs we ask our parents and teachers. Right out, power school, and the list goes on and on. Is this too narrow to be of really use to our value, or do you think it really addresses the mission?
I can't speak to all. We ask our teachers. We were looking into this, the ability to use this for multiple applications. Communicating between and amongst people. With first responders. Regardless of the situation. It was pretty impressive. And so, you're more well versed in this stuff than I am.
No, I agree with Jan. I see the benefit of it. More than likely, we're gonna have enough. You're able to notify all this out over their cell phone, goes out over their, in their classrooms. They're able to say if they're safe or not. So we felt pretty taking. Bring into the school district that would.
I just wanna make it, and that says like 24,000 for the first 9, and
Yeah. 18 plus 15, so.
33.
Yeah.
This is in the minutes, I just
Thank you.
wanted to give clarification. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any public comment on this?
Appreciate you guys, looking into ways to, make school safety the best it could be. And I'm just confused on the interlocal agreement, because I thought that was only for one-time only money, as Jack just said, but this seems like it's a 3-year deal. I'm so confused on it. I don't know what Ursula was saying before, where the public is confused about how money comes and goes, because, in our building in Glacier, the roof is, leaking in spots. It's not even the roof, actually, it's the pipes that run the circulating fluid. It's propylene glycol. And a bunch of it got spilled down on the desk in our office space. So when we went in there, like, everything was covered with antifreeze. And it stinks. And we were like cleaning it up, and we're like, wait a minute, should I be wearing gloves? Like, I don't even know if this is a hazardous chemical. And thank God it wasn't, so, but when those things are going on, and then you hear, and then certain things are tagged and certain things aren't, and I am like lost. Especially when it's a 3-year reoccurring thing, so, but I really trust what you guys are doing, and I appreciate you looking into that, and I really like how the board is holding to account the money, because it is tight, obviously. When you're fixing tracks and like roofs are leaking, that comes up bad. So I really appreciate Ursula bringing that up. That is a concern, I think, too.
Clarification, Jeff?
The idea was that after the 3rd year, it would be budgeted. So the idea was, temporary, and because we're gonna be having budgeting constraints over the next 3 years, we thought that this, even though it's $24,000 spread over 4 years, it's not gonna help any employment or staff. We just thought that if it came out of savings and didn't impact the budget until the 3rd year, after we have an idea what the budgets look like, that was just a easier way to make a decision.
33.
What?
33
$33,000, not 24.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, up next, elementary tuition fund. Chris?
All right, this is revenue, not expense, so. All right, this is really just a follow-up. The January 23rd meeting, we did a budget amendment for our elementary tuition fund to cover the preschool costs of fiscal year 23. We use our tuition fund primarily in arrears, so we total up the expenses of some of our students with special needs at the end of the fiscal year, and then levy what is permissible in the subsequent year to pay for the previous year. And this, just to recap quickly, the preschool program is a program that we are mandated to provide. We do not get any state funding for this, and so we permissibly will levy going forward the cost of that program less the IDEA preschool money that we've received in a year. So that's $315,000, and the budget amendment will be funded by next year's taxpayer levy.
An action item or information?
No, two parts. So we have to approve a proclamation, just kind of for NCA, approve a proclamation that goes up to the public, so it's posted in the paper and at the schools. And then once that's been out, the resolution to pass it to the final.
What motion do you need today to approve the proclamation?
The resolution. Sorry, the resolution, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jen.
And as elementary trustee, I'll second that.
Thank you, Lance. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? None. Any public comment? None. Elementary only. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. No, it'll come back. Got it. Okay, budget update. We've been waiting on this one. Chris?
Chris and I are gonna tag team this.
Okay.
So we've been talking about this for a couple months. This is intended to just give an update of where current reality is, what we've gotten the budget to so far in the process, and then where we're going, so that you will not be surprised on the 28th, when more detailed information and be pointing some directions of where we're going in the process. First two things is we're happy to report we have some budget clarity, and we want to present to you tonight what that budget is right now, and then also looking forward specifically with that, the process that we intend to follow. A bit about levies, what you might see on the 28th, and then revisit, touch on the importance of a communication plan, not a levy campaign. We are somewhere right in the middle of that. So if you remember this chart we showed you a couple months ago, we're right on track. We're following that process. So we determined the fiscal reality, and it's January/February on that timeline right in the middle, and we'll be moving to the next steps. These are the norms that we've agreed to. A lot of the information we have today is presenting the information, the data. One thing that is important to us, and we'll probably say this a couple times just to drive it home, is that the numbers that we're presenting today are not numbers that we need to resolve. They're just numbers for comparison to start painting the bigger picture of what the budget looks like and how things compare to each other, whether we're talking internal numbers or external numbers. What we do with those dollars and those comparisons is we feel really good about this. I think this has brought our team a lot of clarity. You know, we're starting out with just visioning. You need to know where you are with the revenue and expenditures, and then we need a process for developing the budget, and that process is not only gonna guide what we're doing now, but it's gonna set some metrics that will help us continue to guide these budget discussions. The facilities has proven to be pretty complicated. We're gonna be digging into that one in the next couple weeks, but it'll take us down several different paths that have significant financial implications, not just for bonds and dealing with facilities, but how it impacts the regular budget. And then, levy approaches, there's been some things even brought up tonight, you know, the app that we need to do something to address what was in that safety audit, and we ran safety levies, and those safety levies failed. And so you need to turn either to your general fund, or you need to turn to an interlocal agreement. It comes back to those approaches on how do we communicate around a picture of the communication plan. We're happy to check some boxes, but we just want to come back to this agreement. This is what we presented to you before, and so this is the work we'll be doing, and we've done this work. So we feel really good after tonight with that first box being completed, and we're just moving into that budget development process. So specifically with budget clarity, these are the actions that we've taken that make us feel really good about the number that we've generated. And I said, before we get going, I'm not gonna give enough compliments that's warranted here, but to Chris and Jason and Eric for digging into all of this. And so the first bullet here is easy just to move on, but this has been a lot of hours behind the scenes. So we have position control, and when we say that, what we mean is that we have actual staffing from our HR communicating with our business office through e-finance, that when you make a change in the system, it's not populating separate spreadsheets that need to be kept track of, it's populating real-time information that then just changes all the numbers across the board. So getting those systems to talk to each other, yeah, you've heard these conversations probably longer than I have. But I think it's been a 5-year goal of the district, and to see that come together have really helped drive this process. And then on the revenue and expenditures discussion, you just passed a resolution that helped what's identified in this process on the revenue side. So digging into the numbers, we recognized that we weren't capturing something that we could be capturing. Now we're bringing it in to clarify the picture. Also, those discussions are also happening with insurance, projections, comparisons, getting a solid number for negotiations. So we're not saying it's around this much. We know based on the staffing right now, we can just type in a percentage and we get a real number attached to all of that. And then the other thing that this process has brought forward is pushing forward a retirement incentive. We were able to recognize that we had 33% of our certified staff that are topped out, and what that would mean, and then run some budget projections based on retirement. And if we ran it at this amount for the incentive, and if this many people took it, then we could get some really solid numbers. We just entered our student count. We're waiting, back up to retirement incentive, we're waiting until the 27th. That's when we'll have the last numbers on that retirement and who is accepting or not. But we have put in our student count numbers, and then all of the other budgeted numbers that we're talking about is Chris forecasting based on actual historical expenditures. So we feel really comfortable with saying next year, these costs outside of staffing that impact the general fund are at this amount, and we feel good about it when we be able to look back at like a 10-year history of what we've actually spent in those areas. What did I miss, Chris?
I think it's really good. I think we should feel pretty comfortable right now with the projections that we have, and kind of dovetailed nicely with starting union negotiations yesterday. And I don't remember who it was there, Jared, but just bringing up what a percent actually costs. And Anthony left, so I think we're in a really solid spot. It really has been a lot of teamwork, HR, tech, and I feel really good about what we're presenting.
We'll have to move that bar, Keith, because people are dying of suspense to see the bottom line. There you go. Yeah. Kind of like one where you can That's okay. So you just go back to it. Could everybody see the numbers?
I could before, when it was, when we didn't have
Go to
the,
the slideshow.
when it was in like viewing.
Then-
The size increases up there.
All right. So we're looking at two different budgets. Keep in mind, we have two competing problems that are opposite. So on the elementary side, we're 100% funded, and we have a budget shortfall. On the high school side, we're close to 90% funded. We have a budget shortfall. Those bottom line numbers are representative of what we know now. So they're inclusive of the retirements that we are aware of. They're inclusive of all of that conversation that we've just had. And then we put in there just 1% to represent a number that you could multiply if you wanted to for negotiations. So it's a 3 request and negotiation. And the insurance number is a pretty solid number that we believe is going to be actualized with that 10%. On the elementary side, currently sitting about $775,000 in red, and on the high school side, 400 and. No, it would be about 150. Yep.
Math is as good as Scott. Okay, so 150.
With 1% baked into that bottom line number right now.
So with the tech levy, so the elementary sunsets and it's bad, so it's not for absolving that.
This accounts for that not being there. Yes.
This is no levy passed.
All right, this is a interesting comparison that we've been, when I say we, 90% of that's Chris, just so that we're clear.
We know.
Okay. Well, maybe I should be more clear, like 98%. So this is an interesting, comparison that Chris is able to pull, and these are all expenditures that exist that are, through the Office of Public Construction. And what we've been able to do is, take the numbers regardless of the size of the district and the size of the budget, and level those numbers so that they're even representation across all districts. So you're taking an average and you're comparing the average. So the average spent per pupil per size of the budget, and then from there determining where we fall against that average line.
Yeah, so it's, the leftmost category, the one, it's high school instruction. And what it's doing is it's taking the average per pupil expenditure across double A districts in the state. And what it's showing you is that if we spent on a per pupil national basis, what the average is across the state, we would increase our instructional salaries at the high school by $1.9 million. So 1.9 million low on an aggregated per pupil basis. And we broke that out for all of our major departments across the district. There are a few that aren't included in there that are tiny, but these are the kind of the heavy hitters as far as dollar amount goes. So the next one over is maintenance and facilities. And maintenance salaries fall approximately $826,000 below the average across the state. What's that?
Below the bar means that we're spending less than the above the bar means.
That's correct. Yep. And to get up to the bar, to get up to zero, we'd have to spend an additional $826,000 on maintenance salaries.
So there's a couple things to keep in mind. Remember, these aren't numbers that are negative dollars. These are just dollars that represent less than what other people spend. We're not chasing this saying that we need to do anything with the dollar amount. It's just an indicator of where we're spending our money in comparison value.
Why are we spending so less on?
Well, we're about 90% funded, so that makes sense. We've been able to do less with more. And actually, the more we dig into these numbers, the more they make sense for what we see going on with our budget. And then it's also important to realize that some of these budgets are just high school budget, high school district, and then the others, like the maintenance, is a combination of high school and elementary.
So moving on, business office, and I'm going to jump from business office over to superintendent, which is right in the middle there. There's mixed practices across the state. Some people would code HR inside the business office, and some people code HR inside the superintendent's office. So the most accurate way is to look at them together. But regardless of that, the business office follows about $350,000 low, with superintendent and HR at about $15,000. But again, they should be thought of most cleanly as a combined number. Next up is elementary administration. So building administration at the elementary level. Important to note that this doesn't just include principals, but the support staff for principals, like your office manager, attendance clerk, things of that nature. That administration is below by about $120,000. And then at the high school level, we sit low on high school administration by about $115,000. Technology, we actually don't have, we have in here as a placeholder, but we don't actually have a good, we were coding things incorrectly technology-wise. OPI changed some rules on how you are supposed to code technology a few years back. Some districts complied, some didn't. So we don't actually have good technology numbers at this point. We've been talking, Eric and I, about following up on this, but it's going to have to be reaching out to districts individually to get numbers from them. We can't just pull this from the state data. The last, or the transportation and food service, I'm trying to move the mouse up there.
I'll watch your hand.
Transportation and food service, they're also a little bit different in the sense that transportation should be thought of in part by the size of your geographical footprint, right? Because buses have to drive those routes, and those routes take more time. So transportation would need further information presented alongside it to get a good feel, but that is the expense comparison. And then food service as well, we provide food to schools that are not part of our district. And for receiving that service, they do give us money. So it would be appropriate to factor in that revenue side, which we did not do for this as well. But those two do sit high, but they are kind of unique amongst the data sets shown. And then the last one is elementary instruction. And on a per pupil basis, the elementary sits $1.1 million above the average. One thing to note inside of that is that the approximately $440,000 of tech teachers' salaries that were being paid out of that technology fund will be moved over to general fund if we don't pass the tech levy this spring. Do not show in that because they're coded as though they are a media support position, when in fact they're actually teachers. So it would be appropriate to add about $400,000 to that $1.1 million.
We have this disparity, we have that.
So that, I think the more we look at these comparisons, the more the comparisons make sense to us. We are 100% funded at the elementary level. We're close to 90% at the high school level. And so that's the biggest reason for the discrepancy. Plus, we've coded our technology teachers in the tech levy, that's why that bumps that up. It should have been represented in the marginal cost. So we've had places to backfill the general fund budget. I would also say that the structure of our facilities, the structure of just our organization on the elementary side, is not a good model for a stable budget. So when Rankin was built, I think the number of classrooms added to the district was 7 total, but you added, all of the costs that are associated with a building and facilitating a building. We'll get into a little bit more of those details as we talk about how we're navigating the next steps, but
just for clarity, Jen, this was kind of like some of the preliminary work that we did, rather than just kind of knee jerk and like, okay, we're going to start cutting across the board, right? Like digging into the data and saying, where are we in line? Where are we out of line? And then this is just preliminary numbers. These are like crude indicators. They're good information, but they definitely warrant further investigation, right? But it's where we start investigating.
I don't know if there's any way, obviously not to compare to other elementary districts, but because the middle school is so different in its size, is there a way to get an idea of like price per person in very large one school compared to the smaller schools?
yeah, and we've been starting to look at some of those numbers. Again, I'd say that the numbers just, they are what they are. We've really resisted the urge to try to tweak them in the sense of like, even with the tech teachers, to put that number in there. Because once you start pulling those numbers into that, you start changing what you're trying to represent. So we're not presenting this right now and saying, these are the comparisons we're trying to get to even. I think there's a lot of discussion to be had about what is the strategic plan for Kalispell Public Schools and where do we want to be spending our money? There's going to be areas where we're going to say we want to spend more money than the average. That's okay. But this is just a look at, before we even have that discussion, where are we spending the money that we currently have as a comparison to other AA districts across the state. All right, so this checks that first box. When we talked about, we wanted to do some comparable data, and we want to look at against accreditation standards and our strategic plan. We're working through that, but we really have that next box is what we're digging into. And this is what it looks like. Identifying some spending alignment to the strategic plan, identifying a FTE metric, taking a look at our facilities plan and revenue. And I didn't say just levies for a reason. When we talk about revenue, it's lots of different things. One of the things we've noticed is due to the only place that students currently need, or families are asked or need to fill out a free and reduced application is for transportation. So it's a pretty limited, and there's lots of different well-intended programs and things that will balance and cover student accounts and lunch debt services or all of that. But free and reduced numbers actually generate other revenues across our budget in title accounts, in some technology accounts. And so we're taking a look at, we've realized that there's a lot of uncaptured state and federal revenue just because of how we're processing some of the paperwork with our parent population. But revenue also has to do, in the biggest sense, with levies. On the high school side, we're talking about the general fund levy, but we also fail the safety levy. On the elementary side, we're talking about safety levy and a technology levy. When we start breaking this down, what we've noticed right away is that when we do internal comparisons, there is some pretty significant high and low differences when we look at per student costs at our different sites. So on the elementary side, the highest cost that we have associated at a site with per student expenditure is $7,848, and on the low end, it's $5,520 per student. Very similar at the high school, actually. Our highest cost at a high school site is $7,882, and then the $5,496 on the low side. There's lots of different reasons for that. So we're, again, these are just numbers for the sake of getting the idea of where we're spending our money. Some programs cost more money. Some student to teacher ratios are different. Some sites, because of the site and the limitations of the site, generate some of that cost. But we needed to see a reference point of what are the expenditures per student at those sites, so that when we start doing forecasting, we can see how it moves the needle if we do something different or if we plan something different. So that's the main reason that we've generated those per student.
And I think one thing to note, just to be very clear on, is a lot of that discrepancy in the high cost, say the elementary side of $78.48 per student versus $55.20 a student. A lot of that is to do with the actual design of the building, right? There is some stuff you could probably look at for certain scheduling and things along those lines, which is really outside of my lane. But one of the reasons the site plan is so critically important in this whole development process is there is a optimal size to have a school building built.
Was that number an instructional, or was that an all staff number?
That's a total building.
There's two ways to look at the numbers also. We've run a couple ways. One is just if you look at certified FTE to students, and then you look at all expenditures on that site to a student. We're considering projections based on student to FTE ratios, and have had some really preliminary conversations, at least at the elementary level, with the principals about that. And then bring some projections based on site planning models. We're hoping to bring all of this to you by the 28th. This is a tall order. We're neck deep in this information and working through it. But I really believe that we need to paint that full picture so that we can understand what our current reality is, what's possible in the next 3 years, and then what would be possible with grander changes. If you want to go back up to slide 5. When we first started conceptualizing this image, we recognized that budget clarity is going to give us some dollars. So we put like $1. I don't know if you remember that first graph, but we put like $1 in there. Then we went to budget development, there was maybe $2 in there. Now this is playing out in the facilities box and the levies approach. That's where all the money is. Those are more of the long-term, 3 to 5 years out, and that's what we want to project out, so that if we're asking this board to take money from the interlocal agreement to subsidize the general fund, that you will see when that will stop happening and when we'll present a balanced budget. We've been working pretty close with A&E. They've had some presentations. I think the missing piece for them is they don't fully understand just because it's not their scope of work typically. You know, how the building size and site development and long-range facility planning impacts the general fund. And so we're working with them to marry the two numbers. So we have, on one hand, these projected student enrollment numbers that we need to deal with and track that against what the actual growth is versus that projected growth. But you need to start planning before you actually have the problem. So we need to deal with that, but we also need to be strategic about where we add those students. So it doesn't make sense to duplicate some of the situations that we currently have problems with, but it would make a lot of sense if we could take the areas that we have trouble with on a facility side and eliminate those and replace it with a model that was more efficient. We can get to that. Chris, did you want to share any more about that?
No, getting to that kind of optimized efficiency, though, where some of our most efficient, and I use efficient as in, because it carries a connotation that somebody's being efficient, somebody's not being efficient. If you're not efficient, you're lazy or something. That'd be incorrect to think that way. But if they were to run a similar student to FTE ratio, right now we'd see about $1.2 million of cost savings realized. So it's significant. The site piece is really critical in the total picture.
The levy piece is going to be tricky. When you start digging into the levy request and the levy numbers, we got several variables we're going to work through, and likely you're going to see this in options, in multiple options to consider for the levy or levies this spring. And then it's just thinking about where it falls in that budget development process. So that budget development process should be driven by a clear budget, a clear process that's defined by metrics. And then you have, after that, you have addressing your structural issues that are impacting on an annual basis that general fund. Then you start talking about levies. We're in a situation where we're having this levy discussion, and we've had this levy discussion ahead of addressing those metrics discussions and ahead of talking about those facilities issues. So we just don't want to be putting you guys in a position where you're pushing a levy that would fix structural problems, but that will be a timed out basis. It'll only cover that issue for so long. The real solution is going to be dealing with the metric staffing to student ratios and the next level of that conversation of the facility structural issues that lead to some of those inequities in the I would say this is the part of the discussion that you hate it when the numbers are what they are. You go, I wish it didn't reveal some of those things, but that's just the reality that when we look at this, we want to build a plan that is driving towards more stable budgeting and not driving towards supplanting the core problem with levy funds that you're dependent on continuing. So we want to get the main budget ironed out and then come back and talk about levies. And the last piece, it also really highlights the need for a comprehensive communication plan. Because it's definitely not just about passing levies when we're talking about communication. When you're talking about these shifts in FTE ratios to students, you're talking about these inequities between buildings, you start to dig into this conversation. We want to first think differently and more critically about how are we communicating internally, and then how are we communicating externally. And those messages, although they'll be saying the same thing, they're geared towards two different audiences. Then when we start talking about the potential of changing what the model looks like for how we're housing students to educate them, we need to be really clear with the community about why this model isn't sustainable, whether it's deferred maintenance projects or whether it's the size of the structure and the capacity of that structure to grow versus something new. It might be confusing for community members to say, why aren't you just stay in that space and use that space, why would you need a different new space? When you look at the bigger picture, and what it does to the general budget, it's really clear that some of your limitations are based on, trying not to be too cryptic, but we're also not ready to make broad proclamations about, you know, we think this should happen, just because we haven't pinned down those exact dollar amounts. And but when we're in the long-range facility plan, and there's conversations about, do we go the route of a second middle school? Or do we go the route of another elementary school? Those decisions then carry definitely like a political weight with what you can talk about in the community, what parents maybe want. They carry a neighborhood boundary discussion. All of that's true, but we want to check the boxes before we have those discussions about what does that actually do to FTE ratios, and what does that do to general fund ratios, so that when the board's looking at it, they're going, yeah, we get that there's these complications, and it's important to consider all of that, but we don't want to make decisions that are going to drive us back to this conversation about budgets without being aware of it. Questions?
Inside, how can we improve reduced applications? With our families, sit down, you know, fill it out, or is there something that we can offer to them that maybe they don't like confidentiality about it, or they don't want their knowing what they earn or don't earn, right? I mean, are there things we can do to boost our?
Yes, I think there's lots of things we can do. Putting it out there more is a really easy first step of just increasing the awareness. I think communicating that it impacts multiple points of our budget, and appealing to that side of it. It's not just the lunch issue. It's actually driving some of our title funds. It's driving other accounts. The other harder discussion is that we've taken a lot of student fees off the table. The reality is people look at those free and reduced applications when they're considering if they're going to pay for something or not pay for something. And so there's options to where you could say, here's a technology fee, and this technology fee follows the free and reduced form. So if you qualify, it's free. If you qualify as reduced, it's reduced. If you don't qualify, here's the fee. That's typically, and probably historically, how schools have gone through a lot of those processes. With COVID and ESSER funds, there wasn't really a need to put out those structures, and so a lot of those have been peeled back, not just from Kalispell schools, but from most schools. And so just getting back into the practice of where do we need to collect fees to run the programs that we run, and then can we structure that in a way that's aligned to that form.
Those pieces be built in as part of the record. Now from you guys, you know,
Only in the sense that we're going to recommend that we have discussions to move that direction, not the specifics. I think to get to the specific dollar amounts, we really want to be conscientious of like whole family costs. And the more fees you add, we want to just make sure that we're not shifting tax burden, so to speak, on families. We want to just be aware of what is appropriate. That on one hand, paying for the service, that's something that's needed, but on the other hand, not making it something that people can't, not realistic. We don't want to go that direction. We just don't know how many things we're going to add to that list, or recommend adding to that list.
To make a meaningful projection on that, you'd have to have estimates on, actually does qualify, that isn't on, and some of those numbers would just be best guess, and
because I burden to families. But however we can communicate and touch families, if they are in for parent-teacher. I don't know when or how it's appropriate, or if there's any limitations on how many times we can approach, or if we were to get everybody from tomorrow, would that affect any of our funding for the rest of the year? But I mean, I don't know how any of this works, but this is, it strikes me as it's low-hanging fruit, and we do have parents coming to schools at various times, and we should acquire, so I'll leave it at that.
It is low-hanging fruit, but it's also, revenue that it would be reoccurring, and then it, changes the landscape of what we're asking. But again, it's not gonna make up we're not talking about the,
700,000.
yeah, it's not the answer. It's part of the answer. It's part of what we've identified as something that we probably historically captured that we haven't.
But it's, when considering budget. If you're free and reduced. Whether you
The particularly in reduced thing up in a lot of the meetings is surprisingly qualified tech about how we, at the beginning of the year, fill out all of that information.
on the portal, we have
The forms on the portal.
kids in school, right?
Yeah, and they have put in a lot of work to make that run smoothly and make it easier. And, it's surprisingly complicated. It's not for a lack of thought and effort. I brought off a lot. I always feel like I'm like the person in the room that only uses my cell phone. I'm like, everybody's an adult that has a laptop, but I know that there are a lot of parents who are only using the cell phones. Produce forms doesn't very well on that, and it just, not for a lack of thinking of it, but it has been a trick. So we've talked about like, we hand out paper forms again, deals with all paper forms. So and it is not $700,000, but if I remember correctly from some of the meetings, some of the places where we could save money if we were fully, everybody filled it out, is definitely over $100,000.
Rebecca? Two kind of cheerleading moments, actually, how rare for me. I actually, oddly enough, love the idea of fees because of the reverse consequence. As a parent who pays around $2,000 a year to the school for each child for fees, I have once been asked, are you on for your reduced lunch, and if you are, we'll lower that fee. And I can afford it. I'm okay. I don't mind. I love giving money to the school. But I do think about the kid next to me. Like, I think how many kids are not taking advantage of an art class with a $40 fee or this or that thing, because they are, as I said, one teacher in years I've been involved in these schools now has asked, are you on for your reduced lunch? And if you are, just put a quiet note and we will make sure that's covered. So I actually do think a little skin in the game is actually helpful, because maybe it'll at least bring to people's ideas the idea of the reverse of that, which I think is really important in our district. And the other cheerleading is, I love your saying that we spend our money on the things that are important to us. And just, we may find that the smaller school models are not as financially easy. And I think we all know that, but we also have to think what we're gaining from them, what we're willing to lose, and are there other things we need to do that might be more expensive to make? Right. I love your saying, really stay focused on what our goals are. Are we spending money to what our goals are? Because this cheerleading moments are rare enough for me, so enjoy it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you to everybody who's putting in the time for this, and forward to hearing the end result. Okay, moving on. we're at policy updates that are in the third and final reading.
Okay, so there are 3 policies that are in the third reading in one form, which is the records request form. The one we've talked about a couple times now is 1240, which we revised to specifically indicate that, as a Class 1 district, on lines 15 through 17, even though we're adopting this policy in first-class districts such as KPS, trustees may share visits to minimize disruption of the education setting. So we specifically added that line in there so that when we're looking at this policy, we're aware that not every trustee has to visit every school during the school year. And so we looked at came up with a couple different versions of this one, but I think this one is the clearest as far as that obligation now goes.
We have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? And it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any public comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, MTSBA policy update, first reading.
Okay, so this is the discretionary non-resident student attendance policy. As you are probably aware, this next year, no students, out-of-district students are allowed by every school district in the state of Montana now. For example, Bozeman has closed their district off for several years. They recently had to reopen it because of the new law that comes into effect on July 1st. And so what this does then is it allows school districts to set up their procedures for admitting out-of-district students. Specifically says there's only 2 reasons why you can deny an out-of-district student, and that's if the class or the program is completely full, or if they've been expelled from another school district. And so then one of the things that we've been kicking around is what dates that we want to set up with. Several schools in the valley have no date. They're going to not put a date in there other than the date that we have in there of June 1st, when current students have to submit their paperwork to be admitted for the next school year with current out-of-district students. And then also, whether we want to have no date for when they have to have the forms in if they're new out-of-district students, whether we want to have 1 date or whether we want to have 2 dates. For example, 2 dates would be 1 date for each semester as to whether we're going to admit them. So we're still working on this, but I just wanted to put it in front of you. You'll probably come back as we go ahead and go through this, work through this administratively. We've made some changes. One of the things that we're really checking in is to see if it actually was the intent of the law not to allow the students to be enrolled in school until the school board actually approves the list of out-of-district students. After getting legal guidance, yes, that's the way that it is. So that's one thing to consider, is that make sure that we give these a list to you in a timely fashion so those students can be admitted to school, so they're not missing school while they're waiting on the board to take action on the list that's in front of them. The other thing is, of course, remember the reason one of this is so important now is that if you have district students that leave your district and go to another school district, then you have to pay tuition for that student to attend that school district. And it's the same as if they're coming here from another school district. That school district would have to pay KPS tuition for that student to attend here. And so that's a major change. Before, you used to basically take out district students to gain the A and B. And so, but now it's also, there's tuition that's going to be going back and forth between districts, which would be paid at the end of the year as this becomes common throughout the state.
Just to clarify, does that mean that the home district will collect the A and B and then use that money to pay the tuition?
But the home districts will collect the A and B plus the tuition.
They will pay it to the other school.
They'll pay it to other schools if they have students that leave and go to other schools.
A school wouldn't count out of district students.
Yes, they would count, they would get both. They would get the A and B, plus they would get tuition from the other school district. That the out-of-student is
Like for
attending.
the school district whose students have gone somewhere else, where does that tuition money come from?
So if we had a kid that was in Kalispell that was attending Whitefish, Whitefish would count that student. And then, we would send Whitefish a payment that is equivalent to our taxpayer obligation per student to Whitefish. Whitefish would reduce their general fund levy by that amount.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where does the money that we pay theoretically Whitefish come from?
We permissibly levy it.
So real simple, it's super simple.
Like a bra-
You can just shake your head and roll your eyes.
Okay. Anything else, Randy, on that?
No.
Okay, so those policies are in first reading, so we'll see them again.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on, elementary consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Rebecca. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. Public comment? None. Elementary only. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
So, even these kids out of district next year.
But we reduce
Our
our levy by that amount, so it's not a net revenue gain.
It's not a gain, no.
Okay. District-wide consent agenda. So a motion? Ben, have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Jack. It's been moved. Discussion?
I'm sorry, I hate to do this on a consent agenda on page 18 on a reading night, sorry, but I did look at the stop, the location for the bus stop, and specifically Fish Stage Road, or, I note that is a very dangerous, right after the crest of a hill, actually, two hills approaching at that time, at that spot, and I would just, I have driven on that section of road, and specifically on Trump, and I've seen elementary kids walking on the side of the road, and there's no shoulder, and there's no sidewalk, and they're walking back to their houses along Tronstad into traffic, right? And I mean, this is in the wintertime. It's terribly dangerous location, and I would just say, to the extent we know where those kids live, that access that bus stop, and if we can just plant our bus at the end of their driveway, that would be my strong preference, because it's much easier to see a bus with flashing lights than what I would guess to be maybe a 6-year-old with a backpack. So that's my 2 cents, and I don't know where we take it from there, but that's.
Is that something
Thank you, Jen.
that the school district has ever done? Is work, like, is to drop off based on? They went up, right, and then.
We can, thanks, Jen, I appreciate, that's the benefits of being a trustee, living in this town, you know, driving these roads as well. I'll circle back with Andy on that. Whitefish Stage is problematic for us because there's no shoulder. But it's got really deep borrow pits in the winter time. You know, it puts students on the edge of that line. I've worked on a couple, I'm not familiar with this one, but I am familiar with one, back towards the south, that we worked a couple different options to get kids close. Yeah. So we'll circle back on that.
And I mean, I've seen the kids access this stuff. I don't wait this stage. That way, but then the. In the middle there, and it's.
when my kids were in first grade, walking between guardrails and there's no, at that point, I know that determine their stop locations software system, that's not a good way to do it. So I would recommend that you do go back and talk with, if they've adjusted these stops somehow, why are we adjusting these? Right, the quicker stages, high traffic area, high speed. There's a better stop.
It's my understanding that these are like adding a stop. So it's not necessarily adjusting and moving a student to a different stop, but I'll check with her. Every time I've checked with Annie, she's looked at these things 5 different ways. So I really, don't think I'm gonna surprise her with the question, but I will ask her to dig into it again.
Any further discussion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next. Report. Lynn, would you like to start?
Hi. Tonight, I am curious on the update on the, so that's,
Reminder. Good reminder. You talked about it today. That's why I thought it was fresh.
I will address it.
Okay. Jen?
I would just say that we had a really great, communications meeting yesterday. We had a surprise visit for our new, Jason really kind of laid out, communication plan. We did get to look at the chamber, that we could get from the survey, so that was really interesting to look at and see where people were at. I mean, it was pretty good numbers, like pretty positive feedback. We had some negative feedback. So that was good, and then just looking at where we're gonna go forward with internal and external communication. I really think that it's so important that everything that we talked about tonight, like if we only knew like, conversations that we're having, I think that we would have the community on our side, so excited about that moving forward. I wanted to comment on the tour that we did today and the meeting that we did today at Flathead. It was really fantastic, and Heather had brought up that, but I specifically wanted to talk about, went into Kelly Higgins' IB literature class, and, she was doing some things so easily and seemingly easily and gracefully to incorporate PCBE into her classroom. Things that didn't cost any money. She had put the kids into groupings so that instead of having to try to get to each of them, she could get to the groups. And the idea was that if she could go to each group throughout the class, she could give feedback in the moment and work with them so that it wasn't do your work, then give it to me, I'll give you the feedback when it's already too late. And so it was just completely integrated into what she was doing in a way that seemed logical and did not seem like any like new things. She had a list of this is what is expected of you by the time this project is done, which is that giving the control to the students to make sure that they are meeting the expectations and the, what's the word, things they need to know. Competencies. So the competencies were right there, the giving them the chance to get feedback right then was happening, and it was happening in a way that if you didn't ask, it would just be a really well-run classroom that the kids were involved in. So it was nice to see it being put into play in a way That's also attainable.
No report.
I haven't shared this report that's done annually with the audit, but this is something they ask a trustee to complete. Your knowledge of any fraud or suspicion of fraud, your answers of any allegations of fraud or suspected fraud affecting the district, your understanding of the risks of fraud within the district, including any specific fraud risks the district has identified and or account balances or transaction classes that may be susceptible to fraud, different department and operating locations and concerns, relevant commentary I wish to apply, and how does an audit committee exercise oversight activities regarding the entity's assessment of risks or fraud and the programs and controls we have established to mitigate that? And that's supposed to be answered by a committee or a member of the board. And other specific ones, in your opinion, can controls be bypassed or overridden? Are there instances where controls have been bypassed and overridden? How do we communicate to the employee the district's view on the importance of ethical behavior and appropriate business practices? What instructions are employees given on how they are expected to conduct business? What programs and controls has the district implemented to address identified fraud risks or otherwise help prevent, deter, or detect fraud, and how the programs and controls are monitored? So these are just examples of things that the auditor wants to know. How tuned in are we as a board to the financial operations of the district? And I don't know if anybody was aware that that's done annually, but Scott filled it out one year.
And Jack got it this year because they gave it to me, and I thought he was a much better candidate to fill it out. And now they're expecting me to fill it out and Jack to fill it out, so
Well,
it didn't help.
I've been filling it out for years, so I'm very familiar with, all the things that need to go on. And yes, there's staff turnover in a lot of places, so you have to understand how well are those staff trained in those areas. And because there's, 11 different facilities, and then you also have all of the activities that collect money, how well are those reconciled and audited? So yes, I have to be familiar with a lot of systems and what's in place to take care of it. So when people start to question the finances of the district, I go, you don't have a clue.
No, you would never say that to people.
Thank you for filling that out, Jack.
So that's my one and only trustee report.
Thank you, Jack. Becca? Chris? You're good? No report? Pete, how about you?
You know, I just have a couple things. It is, pretty timely because Heather and I, did talk a little bit about charter schools today. And I know we don't normally address, public comment, but you bring up some good points, and so I'll address two of them. We do video, and there's the video up, right there. So we make sure, so I don't know if we were having some issues last time, but I'll address, charter schools. So as you guys know, so by the time this was passed, by the time it got into our hands, we had about a month to put it together. You know, it was totally optional, for the schools to be able to put something together, a lot of brainstorming. We really tried to look around some of the initiatives to align with our strategic plan on what we're doing. Obviously, you got the, PACE Academy and then the Rising Wolf Academy approved, at Glacier High School and then at Flathead High School. And then when we brought that to you, so we do believe in November, we brought that to you. What we brought to you was we asked if we could apply for this. And so basically we applied. Well, then it was wait, because, the Board of Public Ed, did not act on it until January, till like the third week of January. So we did a little bit of background work, you know, with some of the charter schools, trying to flesh some of that out. And the reason, that we had to do some work ahead of time is because we knew by the time that they got approved in January until the registration process, you know, that we would have to have a good foundation in place for this. And so the biggest thing is the board, that once they approve it, then they say they have 45 days to go into contract with Board of Public Ed and the Board of Trustees. Well, right now, as of this point, we have not seen that contract. I don't know exactly when the 45 days is up, but if it's when they approved it in January, then I'm assuming it's sometime in March, depending on if it's 45 business days or 45 days, but we have not seen anything from that. So you guys will have final approval on the charter schools. So one thing that's really important with the charter schools, you know, is we're working through this, you know, trying to provide a lot of that flexibility. There's also an additional $375,000 in base allocation, you know, that would be both at Glacier High School and at Flathead High School if we're able to get 41 full-time A and B enrolled into it. I know it also creates a lot of headaches for Chris. He has a whole list of questions. I'm like, why don't you get through budget clarity, budget development, and facilities and all of that, then we'll talk about it. So the biggest thing is, you know, to find out if this is actually doable, we need to know if we have an interest in it. And again, you know, this isn't typically how we would want to roll something out. We want to have more communication. We want to be able to get it out there. So, you know, if we had an opportunity to talk with the paper, we did talk with them about, you know, our ideas and basically our plans. Michelle and Brad have been working, you know, with parent groups saying, hey, this is what it would look like. But we've also said, hey, if this is not viable, we're not going to rush it. We want to make sure that we're doing a really good job with the charter schools and implementing them. It's also, you know, a lot on staff. So the biggest thing that's going to be driving it, you know, is one, you know, do we have the enrollment? Do we have the interest in charter schools? We'll find that out. They're registering, you know, this week. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks, you know, we will know on that. And then once we have that, then we will be able to start putting a little bit of rubber to the road. So, hey, this is what this could look like. And then we would be coming back once the Board of Public Ed gives us that contract and being asked, you know, with that information that we have, here's how many students we have, here's what it's going to look like, and then we would ask you guys to approve it. If we're not able to go with the charter schools this year, then we do have the option of asking the Board of Public Ed for a year extension. That would give us, you know, more time to be able to work through that. I think it would be, you know, probably a relief for some of the building administrations, even some of the staff, but it's also, you know, some of them have been working on this for a long time, ever since we started looking at, you know, a flexible system of education. And so these ideas have been rattling around, and so now they're able to put them on paper. But we want to make sure that we do a good job, that, you know, we're following through, we've got a solid plan in place, and that we're able to move these forward successfully. So we just have a lot of information to gather and to put together, and then hopefully we can come to you as a board with a recommendation. Hey, we recommend moving the charter schools forward, whether it's at Flathead, Glacier, or both, or neither. We would recommend, you know, extend that after charter schools and more around.
Pete?
Lots to update on, but I'm gonna save it for the next go around, because we're gonna give a PCB workshop. So we've had a lot of stuff going on with that. I'm really excited to share at our next meeting. One other thing we have going in the background that you should have heads up on is that we're continuing to work on House Bill 352, and that's the early literacy bill. We have a group of teachers we're gonna meet again tomorrow, but there's just some specific things in there that are going to challenge that program. The first one is we can't have 5 drills in that program. Our current EK program is about half the population of kids that are of age for kindergarten, but either their parents or our screener has identified that they're not ready for kindergarten. Those students will just go to kindergarten. Actually, they don't have an option to be in EK or the early literacy program. They also can be retained in kindergarten, but the state has cut the funding for 2 years of kindergarten. So you can retain a kid in first grade, like A and B, you can all the way through, but you can't retain a student for A and B in kindergarten. The other issue is that it's treated like any other class, so once you offer it, all kids that qualify, you have to provide a space for. That's another challenge that we're working through that we didn't anticipate. In the past, we've capped it with the number of teachers we have or the number of classrooms we have available. But if we offer it, no matter how many students sign up, we have to enroll them. And I need to work with Randy on the open enrollment bill to see how it connects. And lastly, another challenge is that it's a 10-to-1 FTE, so you can only have 10 students per certified teacher in that program. You can have 18 students, but you have to add a paraprofessional. And then sometimes the logistics of 18 4-year-olds in one room with 2 adults versus 1 adult with 10 is and some of the size of our spaces. And then the other part of that bill was the targeted intervention. It goes from 4-year-olds through 3rd grade. I think that there's some potential for that in the future, but next year, the way that works is you can only run a program from the end of one school calendar to the beginning of the next school calendar. So you can't use that during early releases or something like that, spread it out over the year. You need to do it from the end of the school year to the start. And you need to serve 120 hours. This year, because of the legislation, it doesn't start until July 1st. So trying to get 120 hours in from July 1st until the start of school, you'd be running some really long school days. We're just not going to consider that. This year, that's probably off the table, but anyway, working all of that, and I'll give you an update on where we're at.
Andy?
Yeah, as Heather mentioned, we started negotiations with the KEA yesterday. We have 2 more groups that we're going to start negotiations with, which one, of course, you approved tonight, the custodians, and then the maintenance and the grounds workers were the other ones that we'll be working at. The new accreditation process, working through it, it is due the 29th of March. And so working through that and compiling the information. One of the interesting things about the template that they sent out with the accreditation is that once you start it, you can't stop. Otherwise, if you stop and you go out of it, you lose all your information. So be pretty time-consuming to get it all in and to make sure that we could do that, especially in a large district like ours. Liz and I attended the statewide health insurance plan summit in Helena at the end of January. There were 77 representatives there, involving 8 major groups, educational groups that were represented. We went through 2 days of pretty intensive looking at all of the faults, the positives, the negatives, the roadblocks, how we could overcome those roadblocks type things. And I think basically the attitude that when we went in there was pretty much like, we don't see how this is going to work, till we got to the point of, well, we could work on this further, maybe we can make it work. It's something that the state needs. And of course, one of the groups that was represented was just AA school districts by themselves, because without the AA school districts, this plan is not going to fly. They have to be involved in it. If not all of them, most of them. And so we're looking at that. The thing that came out of there is we each one of those 8 groups set up 2 representatives in each group, so now it's down to 16, from 77 to 16 people that are going to focus in on the issues, and then bring back, hopefully, at the start of a viable plan of how we can make this work for all the school districts, from the smallest in Montana to the largest. I also attended a meeting a couple weeks ago with the Discover Kalispell meeting. One of the things that we mentioned here was our facilities and how they're used, and they emphasized how important it is for the school district to have good facilities that attracts tournaments and meets, and how that impacts the business community during those times when we have those state meets and those divisional tournaments. We did the spring A and B count, which, like they said earlier, we'll be getting those final numbers at the end of February. Obviously, what I expected, our spring count is lower than our fall count, and then we'll combine those 2 numbers, and then we'll get our final A and B numbers And then we'll have our budget set for us by the Office of Public Instruction. And then, of course, that tells us such things as what your maximum levy can be, what your minimum levy can be, and so forth, to make sure that you reach the 80%. So, we're looking forward to getting that information as part of the bigger budget print. And, yep.
Randy? Okay. Sure you glance over our upcoming meetings. Would you be willing to make a motion to adjourn?
I just wanted to introduce myself really quick.
Oh.
I'm Beth Stivers, I'm running for House. Really informative to be here.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Thank
Beth.
you.
Thank you for being here.
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Ursula.
Second.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.